Hello and welcome to another edition of the Full Force News Burst, brought to you by GeneralsJoes.com, with me as your host, Chris Digital Toys McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. Joining me today to discuss his work on YouTube, life, and his amazing collection is Analog Toys' very own Tony Roberts. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this news burst. We have yet another interview for the Full Force that has been far too long in coming. The man behind the incredibly popular and highly recommended YouTube channel Analog Toys, and a collection that I am in awe of, especially that gripping hand statue from Bob Breakin. I'm so jealous. All the way from sunny down under, the awesome Tony Roberts. Tony, thank you so much for joining me tonight, as we are quite some distance apart right now. How are you, my good man?
I'm doing very, very well, thanks. Possibly, I did partake in a few beverages last night, but I didn't stay up too late. So,
that's the perfect preparation. Perfect preparation for the Full Force News Burst right there. I'm so glad to get you on, finally. And we've never. This is the first time we've met, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Considering we're both in, I suppose, the Action Man, Action Force community quite in a big way, let's face it.
Yeah.
And it's surprising to me that we haven't crossed paths, but I suppose being half the world away, that does tend to happen, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, it does. So, I was actually surprised when we were trying to work out the time frame the other day, and I was working out the time frame with
with the UK
Greenwich Mean Time, and you're like, no, I'm in Missouri.
Yeah.
so yeah.
I'm even further away, mate.
Yes.
But anyway,
yes, you are.
Let's get into some of your background about yourself. Take us through your childhood. Where did you grow up? Where did it all start? Take us through your favourite toys, that kind of stuff.
So I was born in West Sussex and grew up in a town called Worthing, which is about 20 minutes west of Brighton. Yeah. And I suppose really the first toys I ever really remember having are the Fisher-Price Adventure People. So
Nice.
I really remember I had like a marine helicopter that had like a carry hook underneath that carried a submarine.
Yeah.
A treasure chest and all that. That's the first toy I really remember having and loving.
Nice.
So I was born in 77. So probably around that age of 3, 4 when we start playing with toys, it was all Star Wars.
Yeah.
Pretty much for sort of 80, 81, and then it was Masters of the Universe and Action Force. Masters of the Universe and Action. So the original Palitoy Action Force. Yeah. Action Man was always peppered through there. I think I'll probably talk a bit more about Action Man later on.
You've seen the show document. You've done your preparation.
Yeah, but then I sort of bounced, from the Palitoy Action Man to Action Force to the Action Force International Heroes, so the British version of GI Joe. Yeah, and then I'm just sort of looking around. I've got my Action Man collection behind me.
It's pretty sensational. I'm gonna have to take a little screen grab of what you're doing as well for the video, because that is a beautiful, by all means, beautiful background you've got going on there. Mine isn't as nice. Well, I'm in like a working studio. There you go. There's the gripping hand. Bob's amazing gripping hand that I'm very jealous of. I mean, he didn't make many of those, did he?
I thought he made about a dozen, and I did a collection tour video probably about a year ago. And so as I was just sort of panned around the cabinets and that appeared, I mentioned in the video, I made about a dozen, and Bob actually reached out to me when he saw it. He said, no, I didn't make a dozen. I think he made like 3 or 4.
Blimey. Wow. Okay, well, that's even worse. And I'm even more jealous right now. Although I can't really say much, because Bob we'll have to give Bob another shout out. He's an amazing guy. Bob Breakin, the let's call him the godfather of Action Force. But he gave Kate and I, for a wedding present, a Skeletron prototype, which just blew us away. We were like, what the hell? So I mean, and it's amazing as well. Like, and it's got like a little kind of the thing that he wrote, like a little certificate and signed and everything. Him holding it. I think there's a picture of him holding it on there as well, which is really cute. But no, Bob's an absolute gent, and that is an amazing piece, dude. I'm very jealous. So you're collecting at the moment. So you're going through like the early 80s. You're still in the UK at this time, I take it.
Yeah. I was in the UK till I was 11. So the best part of my toy childhood, and probably the best toy market in the world, I've got to say.
So true.
Nowhere else in the world had Palitoy, and they are hands down for me the best toy company ever. Nothing else comes close.
So how did you end up in Australia, if you don't mind me asking?
So my mum and dad, growing up in the 80s, everyone watched Neighbours. Crocodile Dundee was quite a big film. And I think my dad just thought, I'm sick of the rain and the cold weather. And he's a mechanical engineer by trade, or mechanical fitter by trade.
Yeah.
So back in those days, in the 80s, if you had a skill set that Australia required, you could apply to emigrate. And it took us a long time. I think they actually applied to go to Australia in 1986.
Yeah.
And actually took 18 months for it all to get processed. And then, in September 88, we didn't really know anyone in Australia, and we just thought, righto, pack the family up and off we go.
Wow. How was that as a child? Were you kind of nervous, excited? How was that as a kid?
I was pretty excited. So my sister thought she was going to live down the road from Scott and Charlene. And I was going to go and fish for barramundi with Mick Dundee. That's what we kind of expected. It wasn't quite that, but it's. I really think that travel is probably one of the best educations anyone can get, and being able to do that as a kid, having that experience of growing up in two different countries, it gave me maybe a bit of a broader view on the world, as opposed to some of the kids who'd always been in England or the kids who'd always been in Australia.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you must have been. There must have been, good excitement there. What was it like, kind of toy-wise? Were you still collecting, or were you still buying toys at 11 years old? I know I kind of dropped out around 12, around high school time. But were you still kind of, buying toys as a kid?
No, so I was probably the same age as you. So I remember like the first sort of 18 months I was in Australia, I was still buying toys. And I remember when we left the United Kingdom, obviously it's, that's an expensive removal cost bringing all your stuff over.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so my family, they sort of sold most of the furniture and said, right, we'll buy new stuff when we get here. And I remember having a garage sale where my parents were like, you have to sell all your toys.
Oh,
I was like,
my God.
No, I can't. And what we ended up agreeing on was no way Action Man was going to get sold. There was no way. I had about 4 figures. I had the Shirley Jeep and trailer.
Nice.
And a box full of outfits. That was sort of the extent of my collection, I think, then. I was allowed to keep them, and I kept some of my Action Force, not all of it. I kept some of it, but pretty much everything else had to get sold.
Oh my God! Sorry, this is hurting me deep right now. I did a similar thing when I was at the end of junior school. I remember shifting my Turtles, Thundercats, He-Man, like everything that wasn't Action Force or G.I. Joe and Action Man went. Similar kind of way. It's funny how we were so drawn to those, we could not let them go, but everything else was, at the time, was surplus to requirements, wasn't it? It's odd. I know I kept my Mask figures as well, and a few odds and ends, but everything else just went, and it was devastating. So I feel your pain there, Tony, massively.
So you were asking me about, was I still collecting in Australia? So I was probably the first 18 months. And I think the first toy I really remember getting in Australia, so we came here in the September.
Yeah.
That Christmas was a very, very small Christmas sort of present-wise. It cost my family a lot of money to come over here. I don't know. I think my dad got a job fairly quickly, but, we, I think, when we first arrived, we flew to Melbourne and actually travelled round for about 2 months before heading over to the West Coast and settling on the West Coast. So that Christmas was pretty small, but then I'm pretty sure my 12th birthday in 1989, I got the Cobra Mamba.
Oh.
And that's probably the last real vintage toy I remember getting in my childhood.
It's so weird that you mentioned that, because in a similar kind of way, in a very kind of parallel feeling that I'm getting at the moment, is that one of the last things I remember seeing and not buying was the Cobra Mamba, and it was randomly in a spa shop in Hunstanton, which, if you were to know UK,
in a spa.
Well, as in like the spa shop is SPAR. It's like a little corner store that it's like a little kind of chain. I'll flash up an image for the people on view, because most of them are American, I think, the viewers for us. And so I went in there randomly, like visiting my nan and granddad at the time. We went in there and it was up on display, loose, and the box was like above like the magazines on like the top rack, as if it was like in Toys R Us where they used to put like the excess stock like on the top. It was so weird, and I remember seeing that and thinking, God, I want that so bad, but I didn't say anything, and therefore it just passed me by. And that was around that time when I think I was shifting into high school, so it was like, I had to kind of stop it. So it's interesting, that was my last experience at all. And yours, that was the last thing you picked up. But that is a beauty, isn't it, the Mamba? Damn.
Yes, it is. It's certainly something I'd like to reacquire for my collection. So, and for your American viewers, like, you said you put a picture up of a Spar, but Spar is not a shop that's known for even selling toys at all.
No, nothing like that. It's crazy, isn't it? It's like a convenient. It's like a it's like a big news agents ish. I say big. It's like two news agents combined.
Yeah.
But it's so weird that they did that. So, I mean, okay, so something I've noticed in watching a lot of your videos, and we'll get onto Analog Toys in a sec. Well, we'll have to bring it up now because it's an incredible YouTube channel. I love it. I've been watching it for a while now as well, and there's just so much quality. I mean, you look at YouTube nowadays, and it is just filled with all sorts of noise, like just so much going on that it's hard to like pick good things. But what I find about Analog Toys is it stands out. The quality stands out really high, and that's always been something that I just always want to, without kissing your too much, it's what I want to aspire to. Do you know what I mean? I want to aspire to that quality. And something that I've noticed a lot in your videos is the amount of, and we'll get into the depth and research element soon, but you've got a real knowledge of like military stuff. Like there's a real like depthy knowledge there. I mean, is that from experience?
Yes, it is, yeah. Yeah, so I came to Australia in 1988. I did like the last year of primary school or junior school, whatever you call it, then to high school.
Yeah.
And in Australia, you can get your driver's your learner's permit at 16, 9 months. But you can't get your actual driver's license till you're 17. The idea being that you can practice as a learner for 3 months, and then So I took my driving test on my 17th birthday. I'd had 3 months of lessons, and I drove down to the local licensing agent. It was very, very early in the morning. I remember passed my driving test first time. Quite proud of that. And I remember getting back home, and it must have been like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. I got back home, and I think I was supposed to be at school that day. It was close to the end of one of the terms at school. But my dad had said, no, look, take the day off. Here's my car. Go for a drive. And I think he was a little bit nervous, wondering, what I'm going to do going off driving on my own, probably thinking I'm going to be a bit of a street hoon or something. But I drove into the city, straight to the Army Recruitment Centre, being 17 years of age.
Wow.
Walked in and signed up for the Australian Army and came home, and then parents were like, what did you do today? And I said, I need you to sign these papers because I'm not 18 yet. I've just signed up for this. I wasn't allowed to go in without my parents' permission, but I did that. And I never actually finished year 12 of high school. I went off to the Army about 8 weeks later.
Wow. So how did your parents take that?
They always knew it was going to happen. Ever since I got an Action Man when I was 3, that's all I ever wanted to do. So, but I've had an unusual history with the military. So I went into the Australian Army as a combat engineer. I did 4 years with the Army in Australia, but then I kind of decided that I didn't want to be Action Man. I wanted to collect Action Man, and
that makes sense. It's not as dangerous.
No, my career really, it wasn't sort of going the way I wanted to, and I decided to get out of the Army. It was a decision I probably regretted a bit later in life, but came back to so I was always on the East Coast when I was in the Australian Army. I came back to the West Coast where my family were, and I really couldn't settle. So in the year 2000, I decided to go traveling. I traveled around, basically took sort of like a gap year and do a bit of backpacking, and I did Southeast Asia, and then I spent a summer in Spain working in bars on the Costa del Sol.
Wow.
The Costa del Crime. And I really enjoyed that. But when I wasn't earning a lot of money working in a bar, so I couldn't really save anything. And when the tourist season dried up and there was no more work, I didn't have enough money to go back to Australia. But I could get a flight back to Gatwick for £69 with EasyJet. And I thought, I want to go and see England as an adult. I'd been back once when I was about 14.
Yeah.
I wanted to see my home country as an adult. So I arrived in the UK in early 2001. And then obviously following the tragedy of September 11, I decided to re-enlist in the military this time in the UK. So I was doing an apprenticeship at the time. I got a modern apprenticeship. So I initially joined the Territorial Army. I went from there into the Special Forces Reserves.
Wow.
And then in 2008, I think it was, I then left the military and joined a private security company. And I spent the next 4 years of my life living and working in Iraq doing private security work.
Oh, that sounds fun.
No.
Goodness me. So basically, what you've just described to me there is an Andy McNab novel. I've just been like remembering a book I read many years ago on a plane, and just thinking that's crazy, man. I had no idea that you did all of that. That's you are Action Man. I wish you'd said.
I was in my younger days.
Where did the flocked hair go? Where did the flocked hair go? Tell me.
Yeah, it was funny when I first reached out to Bob Breakin before I made my Action Man documentary. I got in touch with him I contacted the V&A Museum of Childhood in Bethnal Green, and was basically trying to get in touch with Bob Breakin, and they said, "Oh, look, we won't give out his contact details," which is obviously fair enough. But they said if you want to write him a letter or an email, we will forward it on. So I wrote Bob this letter, sort of telling him a little bit about me, and he said a long time later, when we sort of finally met up, and I was sort of getting ready to start doing the interviews for the documentary, he actually said that when he read the letter and I talked about having Action Man SAS toys when I was a kid, and it was that inspiration that got me to join the army, and I sort of had this quite varied career. That was sort of the hook for him that went, cool. This is the guy who's going to do it. So
cool. I have no idea then why he was happy to hang out with me for a day. But in any case, no, that's awesome, man. That's really cool. What I was going to say as well, like I get the Australian accent kind of creeps in and out every now and again, but it's almost like you've got about 10 accents all trying to like battle with each other. It's like you're always trying to fight to like, I mean, what would you say is your natural accent if you've got one? Is it more Australian? Is it more British?
It's funny. I was chatting with Michael Mercy. Big shout out to Michael Mercy there.
Yeah.
I was chatting with him yesterday, and not actually in like the recorded episode, but we were just chatting afterwards. And I actually asked him, I said, "Do I sound English or Australian to you?" Because a lot of English people say I sound Australian.
Yeah.
But then I go to work here with true blue Aussies.
Yeah.
And I sound English. I think it's just a mess. So I wish I still sounded English. And what happened, coming to Australia when I was so young, when you're 11, 12 years old, you imitate your friends and you pick up their slang. And within about 18 months, everyone was saying, I sounded really Australian. My parents, my relatives back home, picked it up. So did my sister. Then when I went back to the UK in 2001 and I stayed there for sort of 10 years, it took me 5 or 6 years for the English accent, and it came back very strong.
Yeah.
Now I've been back in Australia now for 7 years, and I've gone back again the other way.
So you've just been back and forth, man. You can't get settled, can you?
No, I lived in Thailand for a while as well, and that's where I met my wife. So
where's the Thai accent? Why am I not hearing any Thai in there, Tony?
I don't speak any Thai at all. I know she's annoyed with me whenever she speaks Thai.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. You can't understand it. You just, I just assume it's bad. I'll assume it's bad. So I watched one of your recent videos where you discussed the Action Force Fan Club pack, which I'm in love with as well. I totally, the things that you really hold dear are the same kind of things that I do, honestly. And you were given obviously your code name Dusk Fox, which was amazing. Mine was Firelynx, so I can really tell how they were picking those names now. It was like, right, we need some sort of, aggressive word and an animal, and then we'll just do it that way. Although Dusk isn't really aggressive, is it? It's more just, it's quite relaxing, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, how important for you was that mail-away format with the likes of Special Corps Steel Brigade, Super Trooper, and so on?
So I didn't have any of those three you just listed, Steel Brigade and those ones. But the three I really remember getting, and they were all quite special to me in their own way. Obviously, the membership club pack, it was obviously, it's a very cheap product for them to make. It's mostly paper with a vinyl wallet, but there was just something about that.
Mate, it's incredible.
As a kid, it made me feel like a member of the Action Force team. Exactly. Having my own code name and service record, it was really, really special. So there's obviously that one. I got is it the Manta? So they're like so it was a camouflage windsurfer with a machine gun, and went it can fold up into a backpack. But the very first mail away I ever got was hooded Cobra Commander.
Oh, okay, awesome.
And that was a really special figure to me. It was for my 6-year-old brain, because you had to be a collector to get so many. Did they call them flag points in Action Force?
Action points for Action Force.
Action points. Yeah. It was sort of, it almost legitimized your you know, how much of a fan you were to be able to say, yeah, I've collected this many and I've got this many action points and I've been able to send away for hooded Cobra Commander. And I absolutely loved that figure. I loved it.
Yeah, it was a beauty. I never got the mail away Cobra Commander, but I got pretty much everything after that. And it was like the fan club was huge. That fan club pack was just incredible. And I mean, we're not even talking about the Palatoy mailaways as well, which, you know, Skeletron was a mailaway, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, and the Commander, Z-Force Commander, was also a mailaway. And so, like, you know, I just think you're right. I think it's that aspect of them making you a part of this, you know, giving you a code name and I loved when in that pack you had that map and that game, which you needed like a degree in just to understand. It was like this code breaking thing, and it's like I don't know what I'm doing. I've ruined my code breaker. So I just used the map. We used the map so much when we played Army as kids or played Action Force as kids. Dress up in all our DPs, run out into on the beach or on the cliff or whatever with our fake guns and our berets and all that kind of stuff. And we'd have the map out pretending it was like, you know, this is the mission. And all that kind of stuff.
I did the same thing.
And it was did yours get like destroyed to the point of like ripping up because it's, you know, you folded it so many times? I mean, just that's the beauty part of it, isn't it? It's that kind of dragging you into the action. Yeah.
And I also remember they had there was 2 like felt tip pens in there, but one of them was in invisible ink.
Yes,
that was my favourite part. You could write on the little notepad in this invisible ink, you know, to send a secret message to your friend. And I think I actually even tried to do it in school, you know, with a friend who had another club pack.
Brilliant.
You know, passing notes in school, and the teacher would never be able to see what we say. And then, you know, you'd send him the one with the invisible ink, and he'd rub over it with the other one, and the colour would come up, and he could read the message. To me, that was like, you know, James Bond level stuff, and it was just 2 felt tip pens and a notepad. But I loved it.
It's so true. There was a big thing, I'm not sure if you're aware of it when you were a kid, called Spy Tech. It was, I think, originally an American brand of like stuff, because I think I got most of it in the States. But then it did come out into the UK a little bit later on, like a number of years later, I think in the 90s. And it was like things like these shades that had like slivers of mirrors in the corners of them, so you could see behind you and stuff like that. And binoculars, and there was like honestly, the stuff was amazing. There was a microphone, like one of those little boom mics on what looked like a dictaphone, and you opened it out and you could listen through walls with it, so you could spy on people. And there was I know it was really dodgy. I don't know how they got away with it. And there was like a little laser beam that you got, which would be like you'd cut the laser beam and it would set off an alarm. So you had all these like really cool things, and they went in little pouches, and the pouches are fixed to a vest that you could buy for it, and it made you look like some sort of like, you know, like you see them now like in all the modern figures with the gear on and all of the pouches. And was that something that was on your radar?
No, I've but you've got me really intrigued now.
Oh mate, get involved.
I'll do a little bit of Googling later.
Get involved, because they also gave you like it came with like this, it was like a manual, and it had all these like tips and tricks for following people, and like it was, I mean, I don't know how they got away with it, but it was brilliant. Anyway, now that's burrowing its way into your mind. Now, I've been a keen viewer, as I said before, of your excellent videos for a while now, and I must say the Robo-Skull video will go down in history for me as the greatest of all time. I know I'm reading this off a script right now, but I mean every word that I say. When Bob name dropped my wife Kate and I on that very video, I nearly spit my tea out. I'm not even kidding. You clearly put in tons of research in all your videos. Take us through your process when creating. Let's do with the Robo-Skull video. Take us through the process of creating that.
Well, it all just starts with an idea. So I always keep a notepad by my computer, and often if I'm doing a bit of research, often I sit with a laptop in bed. I always keep a notepad with me, and I've got more ideas than I can often keep up with, and I jot them down. So really, it always starts with the first idea. And I'll be honest, I don't remember where the idea for the Robo-Skull came from. I was talking to Bob, and I didn't have one in my collection at the time. And I remember sort of reaching out to Bob, going, "Hey, I think." Because I know what that toy means to Bob Breakin. It's probably his most favourite toy design.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to him and said, look, I would really like to make a video about the Robo-Skull. do you have any information, perhaps some photographs of the production stuff? And he just gave me this wealth of information. And actually, it was one of the easiest scripts to write because he had already written quite an in-depth history of the Robo Skull. So I tweaked it a bit and then sort of added in. So most of the parts where I do a piece to camera, where I talk directly to camera, they're just my own thoughts. And then a lot of the voiceover, I'm just sort of taking Bob's words with a slight tweak. So that was a really easy script to write. But yeah, once he sent me all of the images of the behind the scenes stuff of how it was developed, the concept drawings, the old photographs, it's like, I've got to make this video now, but I don't have a Robo Skull. Oh, no. So I started hunting around, and I think you'll see very early on in that video, I take a screenshot from eBay where I say, one sold earlier that year for over £1,000. So, well, I was bidding on that, and I bid quite a bit, and then I got outbid and I bid a bit more, and I'm thinking, I'm getting a little bit out of control here. I never expected it to go for that. I knew they were expensive. Yeah, I never expected to go for that amount.
I think there are even more now. I think the US market has really driven them up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, I paid about 650 Australian for mine, which is about 500 US for a complete one with a pilot, which I think was probably a little bit over, but it didn't matter to me. I needed it for the video.
Well, not now. It's a really good price at the moment. That's perfect. Yeah. That's great. Damn, man.
Yeah. So I suppose with my other videos, like that, my Action Man documentary is obviously it's something I'm very, very proud of. But that I made that a long time ago. That was sort of 2012. I was doing all the filming and the interviews, and I don't think it came out until 2013.
Yeah.
And I actually haven't watched it for a while until very recently. I think I sat down and watched it last weekend.
The Full Force, me. When I was on Facebook, I actually shared that exact part 1 and part 2 video, and that was before I knew of you. Really, that was. I mean, it was only kind of seeing the branding, if you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean? Yep. Like I hadn't really put the 2 and 2 together that you are Analog Toys kind of thing. And I remember loving that video, and just that's why I shared it. It wasn't one of those things where you might kind of meet people and you talk to them and you interview them and then you start sharing their stuff because of that interaction. It was just because it was awesome. So that Action Man video, that still to this day, I'm sure it was the 2-parter, right? The part 1 and part 2.
3 parts.
No, you're right. It was. Sorry, I apologise.
Yeah.
That stands up as a really good kind of documentary style video for me.
Analog Toys didn't actually exist when I made that.
Yeah.
It was more so I sold it on DVD for a couple of years as just a single 90-minute documentary, and then when I put it onto YouTube, it was like 90 minutes is too long. Split it up into 3 parts, so basically the 60s, the 70s, and then the Eagle Eye era. So that's how I sort of split it up, and just added the Analog Toys branding to it then, because I'd started Analog Toys. And
I see. Sorry. So when I saw it, you'd added the branding to it on the YouTube video. I see. I got you.
Yeah. And Analog Toys was sort of born in 2016, and that documentary was made 4 years before. And actually, after making that documentary, I really had a 4-year period where I sort of, I really enjoyed that experience, and I was just sort of, but I've done it now. There's nothing more I can do, and then one day just Analog Toys was born. I was like, I can just make YouTube videos, which I don't know why I'd never thought of it before, because I had the trailer for the Story of Action Man documentary on YouTube for years and years.
Yeah.
So if you actually look at Analog Toys on YouTube, the name used to be something else. It says that I've been around since 2011. Well, Analog Toys was actually born in July 2016.
Right.
I just changed the name and kept the same account because it had been there for so long. I was already able to use custom thumbnails because I'd had so many views. I was like, there's no point starting the whole thing brand new and going back to square one.
Totally.
Yeah, but I'm very proud of that documentary. But I did watch it back the other day and thought I've come so far from when I made that. The way I talk to a camera.
Yeah,
I think that there's an excessive use of looping music on it, which at the time never really bothered me. And I watch it now and I was like, that bugs me. I think George Lucas always said a film is never really finished. You just move on to the next one or something like that.
Yeah.
You always want to tweak it. And I look back at it now and think, man, if I was to make that today, it would look so different.
Yeah.
And I've actually toyed with the idea of maybe doing I don't think I'm going to redo the whole documentary. I think that's a bit pointless. I've sort of done it already, but I've got plans for a lot of new Action Man videos coming. I'm still sort of working on how the format's going to go and
awesome.
Where I'm going to start. But beyond that, probably the Robo Skull is my next favourite video of mine, my one I'm most proud of, and that's really down to the generosity of Bob Breakin and because I was able to put information and photos and images into that which you just don't see in a normal YouTube video.
Well, dude, I'll give you an example. I did a talk at Assembly Required in Iowa, and they asked me to do a RoboSkull talk presentation, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I'll knock something like that up, even though I had a sort of different talks that I do at different kind of events and stuff. And I thought, well, no, I can do a RoboSkull one. And I just basically stole everything from that video. I stole images. I stole like information. I'm like, I'm sure Tony and Bob won't mind me utilizing this information because it's the right info. But yeah, honestly, that video was like a lifesaver for me because I was like, I was writing a script before, and I'd watched your video, and before that happened, and I'm writing this script, and I'm thinking, oh God, I don't have a picture of this, that, and the other. So I messaged Bob, and Bob, God love him, I love him to death, but if I Facebook message him, it could be 3 months before I get anything back because that's how often he checks Facebook, and then. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, there's a bit of a time crunch on. Let me see if I can find these online. And I'm like, I'm sure we did an episode for the Full Force, and Dave Tree obviously gave me contributed a ton of images for that particular episode. So I'm like, searching like hard drives and going back and looking at other stuff, and I'm like, and thankfully your video, I'm like, yes, I better check that out. And I'm like, okay, I can use that image, perfect. Yeah. There we go. It was a lifesaver. So yeah, and that is to this day one of my favorite videos, I think.
Yeah, it's one of my personal favorites. I don't watch my own videos back that much. I tend to I watch them back a little bit when they first get uploaded.
Yeah.
As you start reading the comments on there, and
plus if you've edited it, mate, you've seen it about 4,000 million times.
yeah. But that's one that I actually think I sat down and watched that again. Yeah, I watched that again yesterday, kind of in preparation for this, because I knew it was going to be. So there's no way I'm going to talk to Full Force and not talk about the Robo Skull. Come on, it's the greatest Palatoy Action Force toy they ever made.
Agreed. I mean, it's global now as well. Like everyone wants one, and it's crazy. Yeah. It's funny how. Because I was, again, talking to Bob about it, the fact that he mentioned that the Robo Skull, or I was kind of confused, and I was posing the question to him, but I don't think he was fully, he don't think he knew exactly. We couldn't work out whether the Robo Skull had sold well and was taken over into the next line because it sold well, or because there was a surplus of stock. And I think the consensus is that there was a surplus of stock that they rolled over to the next, the next line. And because of that, it made me think, well, if it didn't capture the imagination of kids then, it certainly has now. Do you know what I mean? It's definitely one of the collector's holy grail kind of items. And speaking of holy grail items, let's get stuck into Action Man now, because, I mean, some of those things you have are truly special. What are your favourite pieces from the line? I know I've just seen a video where you explain this, but I want you to tell our Full Force viewers and listeners.
No, so that video I did was, I think I called it my rarest and most unusual Action Man items.
Okay.
You're asking me my favourites.
Okay, that's good.
How long is this interview?
It's probably going to be another hour now, isn't it?
Just on this question, yeah. My favourite. So
I can see you're really excited because you're like writhing. Your hands are writhing together, and you're like, oh my God, I get to talk about Action Man right now. Too many, right? Well, okay, let's break it down. Favorite favorite body version. Let's start with the basic figure itself. Favorite body version.
Well, I grew up in the Blue Pants Eagle Eye era.
Same.
For those Action Man fans, if you don't know what that is, I'll Google it. I'm not going to explain.
watch an Analog Toys video, for goodness sake.
Yeah. So the dynamic physique figure. So That's what I had as a kid, and I liked. But my brother was born in '71, so I had hand-me-downs from him. So I had the flocked hair, gripping hands Action Man.
Yeah.
And I had an uncle who was born in the early '60s, so I was actually, and that's why I collect the whole Action Man range, because as a kid I had original painted hair Action Man figures from the '60s right up to the early '80s stuff, the SAS stuff.
Yeah.
So when I got into collecting, it wasn't like, I'm going to collect the Eagle Eye era because that's my era. That wasn't the case. had so much older stuff, which is quite a challenge for a collector when you want to collect such a massive toy line like Action Man. So from the Eagle Eye era, I'm very, very fond of the SAS. Really, really fond of the SAS. Just that all black combat team. I just love it. I also really liked the parachute regiment.
Awesome.
And I had, as a kid, I had the Eagle Eye version where he had like flexible PVC webbing rather than the cloth belt and the cloth beret of the rubber beret. So probably from the Eagle Eye era. I'm just looking around my collection.
I know, it's a fun time. It's a fun question, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely the parachute regiment and the SAS. They were favourites as kids. Today, I really, really like the Long Range Desert Group and the Africa Corps.
Nice.
But I wasn't aware of them when I was kids. When I was a kid, I never saw them in toy stores. I didn't have any. I probably wasn't aware of those until I started collecting again in the mid-90s. I started doing a bit of research, and I met a few other collectors, and that's really where my knowledge started to grow from there. But I'm also incredibly fond of the early '60s stuff.
Yeah.
The original, like the fully loaded combat soldier with that combat field jacket is so incredibly well tailored. The quality of those clothes back in the '60s were amazing.
They had proper, not dressmakers, but like proper kind of like skilled technicians working on those particular items. Yeah. There's a whole I know at Palatoy there was like a group of females who were just like doll dresses and all that kind of stuff, but they were doing a lot of the Action Man stuff, weren't they? And they were just knocking it out the park.
Yeah, so you talked to Bob Breakin about how they would develop the outfits in those days, and it was really a collaboration between the toy designers and the dress designers, because basically Bob and his team would design the accessories and the helmets and that kind of thing, and the dress designers would work on the tunic and the trousers and all that. So it was a real collaboration between the two to see how they could get it together. So really my other favourites it's got to be the Action Man Ceremonials range. They're just incredible.
Yeah, that's Bob's favourite era, I think, isn't it? I think he said he loves the ceremonial stuff.
Yeah, because that's when they really took, they'd already designed some unique stuff in the late '60s when they started to do the Polar Explorer and the Mountaineer and those kind of things. And I know Bob is very proud of those as well. I think he designed the dog sled for the Polar Explorer.
So cool.
But I think when the ceremonials came in 1970, that was when they really took this American concept of G.I. Joe and went, right, we are going to stamp this with the Union flag and say this is a British product. And there's been nothing like it before or since, and I don't think there ever will be a line of toys quite like that.
Oh, totally agree. I suppose kind of in relation, and this could be a difficult question, or it could be a very easy one, but what was it specifically that drew you to Action Man in the first place? I mean, what made you fall in love with it? What was it about the actual thing? Because I know for some people it's a very easy question about the kind of stuff that they like, but for others, I mean, if I was to be asked the question myself about Action Force, I would struggle to tell you. There's just something about it, and I'm curious to know what you think about, with the Action Man. What was it specifically that drew you to that?
So one of my earliest childhood memories, I'm probably 3 or 4 years old, and I don't know if I was given one of my brother's Action Man figures or whether I was given my own one. I was too young to really remember, but I just remember being in the back garden of my house in England, and my dad giving me, and it was an Eagle Eye, just a basic soldier with the green sweater, the camouflage trousers, the black beret, and the rifle. And yes, my earliest childhood memory is looking up at my dad and going, what's this? Like, what does he do? And he's like, it's a soldier. And I was just like, that's the coolest thing ever. When I grow up, I'm going to be a soldier.
Amazing.
And literally, it was just that lightning in a bottle moment for me that really changed the rest of my life. And I think where it sort of grew from there, and so through the 80s, I was getting all these other toy lines, and I was often given Action Man stuff, but for some reason, every Christmas I would get all this other stuff that I liked, but it wasn't what I really wanted, with, Star Wars and He-Man and all this. And I can remember being in toy stores around 1985. You know, I would have been like 7, 8 years old. And I couldn't comprehend why Action Man was not on the shelves. And my parents were, oh, we're going to get you some Action Force stuff. I was like, but I want Action Man. Where is it? And that's probably where the whole collecting thing really started, because even then I was like, I need to get this. And really, I think, to sum it up for me, what makes Action Man different to other toy lines is that whether it be Star Wars or Rambo or Action Force, there was always a storyline or a mythology, whatever you want to call it, tied to that.
Yeah.
Didn't have that with Action Man. Action Man was whatever you wanted him to be.
Yeah.
So I had about 5 or 6 Action Men when I was a kid. I don't remember it exactly. And I had one particular favourite who was codenamed Dusk Fox. Eventually,
amazing.
I gave him the nickname, and I think actually his name was Michael for some reason. I don't know why I named him Mike. And I didn't do that with the others. Like, the other guys were all, I think, because I grew up in the 80s with the whole one-man army thing with Rambo and Commando. That's how my play pattern with Action Man was. All the other ones were the baddies.
Yeah.
And my Action Man was Chuck Norris or whatever. And over the years, I can remember I'd written like my own service record for him, saying which wars he'd fought in and what medals he won and all this. And he became my childhood friend, and that is really what makes it. I have a connection to all the toys that I had and played with as a kid, but nothing has that same level of personal connection quite like Action Man does.
That's amazing. And a bloody good answer as well. Did you have the same love for Action Force? I mean, what was your experience with that particular line as a kid? I mean, what was the love as strong, shall we say?
There is no toy line in the world that I have the same love for as Action Man. There's not even a close second. But having said that, I am incredibly, incredibly fond of the Palitoy Action Force line. And I've got another very, very early childhood memory. So this would have been... Action Force came out in 81, was it?
82, the Palitoy one, yeah.
Okay, so it was 1982, so I would have been about 4 or 5 years old. And I had to go to hospital for a surgery for an undescended testicle.
Oh, classic!
Yeah, I'm not ashamed to say that at all. And
hang on, what image can I flash up on the screen when you say that? I'll just put a censored. I'll put a censored thing.
A picture of Palpatine's face, maybe. I've always thought his face looked like a testicle anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
So I had to have quite a large incision cut into the bottom of my belly. And it was... I don't really remember any of the surgery part.
Good.
But I can remember... It's the only... my daddy's, a bit of a tough guy, has a bit of a tough guy reputation. I've never even seen him cry at a funeral. He cried when he saw the pain I was in hospital.
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow.
I remember waking up from the surgery and my parents being in the hospital room with me. And to cheer me up, I was given the Action Force Mountain and Arctic, the big card with the AF9. Yes. So I have such an incredible connection to that particular toy from my childhood, because you can talk about toy collectors today and I've got this one mint card and it cost me $300. Yeah, it didn't cost you an undescended testicle operation, mate. So that toy is particularly special to me.
Wow. And again, I don't know what image I'm going to have to flash up. But no, I totally agree. Like as well, I think one of my favourite ever figures from the Palitoy era is the Arctic Assault figure, because I just love that camouflage. It's like the 20 Minutes into the Future line, that, isn't it, really? Because wasn't the Arctic Assault from the special team? Or was that... wasn't it?
Yeah, from the special team, yeah.
Yeah, and again, just brilliant. I love all that shit. I'll bleep that. So as I mentioned earlier, I saw you on Toy Guys Talking with Michael Mercer the other day. Big shout out to him. And I know you've just done another one, so I'll expect another couple of hours of watching you two chat about toys again, which is great.
Yeah, this one did go for about 2 hours as well.
I think the last one was an hour and a half. So yeah, you've got a good... Yeah. You guys must have had so much more to go over. I want to go back on his show now, but we'll have nothing to say. Like, I think we spoke about the Visionaries to start with, and that took 10 minutes. So, I mean, you mentioned a number of other lines that you collect and enjoy. Take us through some of those at the moment. I mean, obviously you said that there's no close second for you, but what are the ones that aren't Action Man and Action Force that, you know, have a close connection to you?
So over the years since I've been collecting, I stopped having toys when I was a kid when I was 12. I think when I was 13, I wanted a surfboard.
Nice.
You know, growing up, I just hit high school, started getting interested in girls, and being in Australia, I very quickly realised that all the girls that I seem to tickle my fancy, they all seem to be interested in the surfer boys.
There you go.
So I've never been able to surf, but I did get a surfboard for Christmas one year. But I only went like 18 months, maybe 2 years, where I wasn't collecting toys, because then the G.I. Joe Hall of Fame 12-inch figures came out, and I even at that age, although I wasn't collecting toys, I would still look at toys when I went past the toy shop.
Yeah.
And I saw them, and I was probably 14. I started buying them, and then I started seriously collecting vintage Action Man when I was 16. But from 16 right through to pretty much 2011, 2012, when I made the documentary, all I collected was Action Man. There was nothing else for me, even though I had this connection to a lot of other toy lines as a kid.
Yeah.
But I think after making that documentary, and it was sort of a culmination of, more than 20 years of collecting and research and all this stuff, I think I just got overdosed on Action Man and never got over it, never got rid of any. But then I went a long period where I didn't collect anything else. And it was like, I'm going to branch out into other things. And the first toy line I started collecting was the $6 Million Man.
Nice.
Again, not from my era. That was more my brother's era, but I had hand-me-down toys, and probably something about, I mean, they're a bit taller than 12-inch, but it's something about that scale. That's my favorite toy scale as well.
Yeah.
So they're probably a close second. I do like Migos.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know, Rambo.
What an awesome toy line. Oh my God. Like, okay, so you mentioned Rambo when you were talking with Michael, and I felt like, when you're watching a video or listening to a podcast and you're dying to be like shouting things out and talking and like getting involved with it. And like, I know we've got a couple of listeners that have said that before when we're doing stuff on the show. They're always wanting to kind of chime in and say stuff. And I was desperate to talk about it because you mentioned, obviously, like the toys were just like incredible, and there was the cartoon and all that kind of stuff. I remember vividly seeing the Rambo toy commercials in the US in 1989 when we went out there. I went out there with my mom and dad as on holiday. Went to see our friend Kelly in Vegas, and while I was there, this commercial comes on, or advert comes on, and I'm getting far too Americanized. And it was Rambo, the Forces of Freedom figures. And I was sitting there like, who do I have to kill to get these figures? Because I'll do it. Like, I'm like looking at this advert like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. First of all, I didn't know about the cartoon. So I'm like,
neither did I.
There are toys for this? And the same thing happened with Aliens and Predator. They were in the stores in like 91, 92, I think, in the States. And I remember seeing them on shelves and thinking, they made a toy line about an R-rated movie. How have they even done this? So with Rambo, I didn't even know there was a cartoon with it. And then later on in that stay in the States, that cartoon was on TV, and I'm like, holy shit, I need to get involved in this. I mean, when was the first time that Rambo thing hit you? Was it later in life, or did you actually experience it as a kid?
No, as a kid. So that was the last real toy line that I collected. So I think it came out in the States in 86. I don't think I started getting it until 87. So pretty much the last 2 years I was in the UK, I was getting that. And I think I was first aware of it by literally just walking past them in a toy aisle somewhere, seeing them for the first time. And I was a massive Rambo fan. I'd probably watched First Blood about 200 times by then already.
God. What an amazing film as well. Sorry, carry on.
No, I remember my dad. So it was around the time that First Blood Part 2 came out in the cinemas. They aired First Blood on ITV or something like that late at night. And my dad recorded it on VHS and said, watch this movie. And maybe I was probably only 8 when he did that, so maybe I shouldn't have been watching it. But,
dude, I watched it when it was first out as well. We all did. We all saw the films. Yeah. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, I even at that age, I understood the difference between a film and real life, and it never disturbed me too much, I think. But I just remember watching that go, Matt. That character just captivated me. The quietly spoken warrior who just wanted to be left alone, but was just this total bad. and then I can always remember my brother went to see First Blood Parts because he was like 6 years older. He went to see that in the cinema, and him coming home and trying to explain to me about, how they electrocute him when he's tied to a bed and all that. I can remember this stuff. And me having to wait a long, long time before it came out in video stores and was able to watch it. But
God almighty, it was so long, wasn't it, back in the day?
It was. Because even then, like when it would come out on VHS as well, they might only get 2 copies in your local video store. And I remember you would have to, for the first couple of months it was out, you'd have to pre-order it and hope you were, on the wait list for when you could rent it.
God, how did we live back then? Seriously.
Oh. Yeah, I wonder how, but I tell you what, it was a much better time for me.
it was definitely. I mean, it definitely grew the imagination more, I think, as a kid. Like, and being able to, like, in the space that you don't have these things, playing out and being with your friends and playing with toys and all that kind of stuff. There was so much more to that as well than just constantly being, I don't know, just having everything in you, so you don't have to leave the house now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know what you mean though. Like, at times I think, how the did I live without my phone? And then other times I think, oh God, easily. It was loads of fun.
Yeah, it was better for me. So yeah. I've told this story a few times before, but the name Analog Toys came from the fact that I was trying to come up with a name, and I was talking to my wife, and my son has never ever been interested in action figures ever. I've tried. I've bought stuff for him, and he just tosses it to a side, and he's like, "Can I download a new game on my iPad?" And
mate,
he played with Lego a little bit when he was younger, a little bit, but beyond 5, it's all been electronics. So I said to my wife, his generation is so different to mine. They've grown up in the digital age. When I was a kid, it was the analog age. And I was like, that's it, Analog Toys.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
But you should have called it Teletext Toys or CFAX Toys.
Argos Catalog Toys.
Argos. Oh my goodness, yeah. I'm going to have to, all of these things are going on the video. That's another beautiful thing. I love that there are loads of sites that post all of the Argos catalogs. Like, you can like read through them and everything. And obviously seeing some of the, the Action Man, G.I. Joe, Action Force stuff in there, it's amazing. I love that. Okay, so where were we? Rambo, yes. Now, you mentioned on that, and this is where I was chomping at the bit to agree with you, where you said that you think that was Sylvester Stallone's kind of pivotal moment, like his greatest ever performance, better than Rocky and all that kind of stuff. And I agree. I think that scene where he breaks down is one of the most powerful scenes in cinematic history. Like, especially for someone of Stallone's pedigree, who isn't necessarily known as a great actor, that particular scene for me, just like where he breaks down and Troutman's in the room with him and he's just crying and he's talking about all those, and I'm just like, is this the same guy? Like, it's just unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you'll often hear, film critics and people talk about the greatest actors are the ones who can convey emotion and a feeling without dialogue.
Yeah.
He has hardly any dialogue in that film, and yet, you understand the trauma in his own mind, and I think that's a movie performance that just is the first movie performance that really captured me as a child and has never ever let go.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, years later in life, given now my own experiences, I have a newfound appreciation for that, for someone who, like, when I was talking to Michael Mercer yesterday and said, I don't really feel as though I've suffered from PTSD, but I did have a lot of depression for some years.
Yeah.
My wife would probably say I'm sort of borderline. Not these days, I'm a pretty happy guy these days.
Yeah.
But being able to sort of go back, rewatch that through a different lens of my own life experience, and I've had moments in my life where I've broken down like that. Yeah, he does not get enough credit for that performance. He really doesn't.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you're right. I suppose it's a beacon at the moment for that kind of the PTSD, the mental health issues and all that kind of stuff. It's like it's an important thing in an odd way. It's turned from what is effectively, from when we were looking back at it as, kids, or even like not that long ago, we're probably looking back on it thinking it's just an 80s action flick. It's just your classic one man against lots of men and being like this crazy hero. But that element, that tiny little element of the film changes it completely into something that's actually more classic. It's actually, definitely deserves more credit than just being an action film. And I think most people do consider it to be like a real gem of that era.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't call First Blood an action film at all. I think it's a dramatic character study.
True.
Yeah, that's the way it's always been for me. I did joke with Michael Mercer. There's a few scenes in the middle there get a little bit comical, but they're still, with the National Guardsmen. And, Clint, you got to clean this mess up. He's like, I'm going to be back at the drugstore tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to play on the fact that they were like part timers and everything. Yeah. It's you're right though. It's definitely a character study, 100%. Let's move out of toys for a second, and stay in toys, oddly. How do you see your channel developing over time? I mean, where do you see the project in, say, 5 years?
An interesting question, because I've never really looked at this as a project. This is just something it's a hobby. So toy collecting is a hobby. I've just now added another layer to that hobby. And
I see everything as a project. Everything that happens, I'm like, this is a project, and that has more credence a lot of the time than I'm just doing this in my off time. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like I feel like I'm a professional because it's a project.
Yeah. No, I probably refer to each individual video as a project, but Analog Toys as a whole to me is not a project. It's just a way for me to I now live in quite a remote part of Australia. I work for a big mining resources company. So my closest city where all my family live is 1,600 kilometres away. It's a 2-hour flight or a 16-hour drive.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the nearest city to us, big city.
How long would it take you to walk it?
38 days
in the bush.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a really small town. It's very remote, but I think we've got a population of around 18,000 in this town.
Yeah.
But I don't know any other toy collectors. I don't really advertise that I'm a toy collector. I like to keep my work and life separate. And when you live in a town like this, everyone knows everyone from work. So there's only a handful of my friends who are even aware that I have this collection on the 3rd floor of my townhouse.
Do they not watch your videos then? Have they not found out that you've got a channel?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna spread the word so you get outed. I'm not.
It's funny. So I do a lot of stuff on Facebook with the Analog Toys channel, but I don't link it to my own private profile. So living in such a remote place where I don't know other toy collectors, I rarely get to go to toy shows these days. So Analog Toys is my way of staying connected with that community and sharing my collection and not really my knowledge. I like to share.
Oh, you've got a knowledge, Tony. You've got a great knowledge.
Yeah, I do put a lot of research into my videos, and So where do I see Analog Toys in 5 years' time? Well, I like to think that I'll just still be doing what I'm doing and producing videos. I do have some plans for some bigger stuff. One of the things I was looking the other day at, my YouTube analytics, and that's not really a driving factor for me behind why I do this. I don't really have any obsession with how many views a video gets or how many subscribers I have or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not an analytical obsession. It's a vintage obsession, right?
That's right. So I recently did a video on Action Man collecting guides. So there's a lot of different guidebooks available, and I did a video on that to try and educate people on, if you're just getting into Action Man and you want to go out and get some of these guidebooks, some of them are worth getting, some of them aren't. Some of them are really good, but if you want to get packaged items, there's no packaged items. So I did a video on that, and I knew when I was making it that, when I was writing the script and doing that whole thing, I thought, this is not going to be an incredibly popular video. That does not sway my decision on whether I want to make that video. There's still going to be an audience for it, and that's what I do it for. And when I was looking at these analytics the other day, I've actually only got 79 videos, I think, or 77 videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
Over 3 years, I have very, very low levels of output. But it's because I hold my videos to such a high standard. They can't be made quickly. And I'm not saying that other YouTube channels, this is just how I do mine. I would love to be able to pump out 2 or 3 videos a week. If I have a really productive month, I'll do 2 videos, maybe 3.
Yeah.
But on average, it's one a fortnight. I often talk to Michael Mercy, like that guy's a workhorse. I don't know how.
It's unreal. Like, I know I put out a lot of content, but like he is churning out some incredible videos at a rapid rate. Yeah.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing for me, I have a lot of other hobbies outside of toys as well. So I run the local junior football club, or soccer for your American fans.
You were right the first time.
Well, actually, here in Australia, they call it soccer. So I'm
the Socceroos, aren't they? The Australian team.
Yeah. So I'm actually the president of the Headland Junior Soccer Association, and I coach my son's age group, the under-13s, which is a fantastic age group to coach. It's when they really, their skills are really starting to develop.
Yeah.
They don't around as much; they actually listen to you.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of 6 months of the year. I spend a lot of time doing that. And
brilliant.
For us, the season we're only a month in, so I get very busy with that. But also living where I do, I live in a very hot part of Australia where the fishing is really good. I've got a boat. I go up creeks. I catch a lot of crabs. I do a lot of fishing. So I try to fit all this stuff in around the videos and the toy collecting and my day job.
Yeah, there's only so much time in a day.
Yeah, there is. And the hardest part for me I've heard a lot of people over the years say the hardest part of them for making a YouTube video is the editing, because it takes so long.
God, tell me about it.
It does take a long time, but that's actually my favorite part of the process. I really, really enjoy that part of the process. The part I hate is the actual writing, because I have the idea in my head, and I've already got a lot of the knowledge and my own opinions that I want to give, and obviously I do a bit of research. It's actually, because 90% of my videos are completely scripted, it's actually sitting down to type all that script up, and often, an average video for me is the script is around 2,000 words. It takes quite a while to write that, and that's being the very first step in the process, being the one that I enjoy the least and find the most time consuming, often makes it very hard. And normally, once I get past that first step of writing the script, the rest of it comes really quick. As soon as that script's locked and loaded, I can't wait to set the toys up on a table, pick which T-shirt I'm going to wear, get the lights going, and start recording. And from there, I really enjoy the rest of the process. So
that's awesome, man. That's great. And are there any more like long form kind of projects you've got in the tank? I mean, I know you were talking about more Action Man videos, but I mean, have you thought of doing some more kind of like feature length kind of documentary stuff? And if so, do you need any help? Just kidding.
I may actually need some help. I'm going to ask you a question in a minute.
Brilliant.
My sort of what I call my flagship line of videos is my Toy Histories episodes. I've done 10 of those. At the end of each video, I announce as the credits roll what the next one's going to be.
Rookie mistake.
Well, Michael Mercy said the same thing to me, but it's worked so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, it lights the fire under your though, doesn't it? That's the thing.
I think once I commit to my audience that, right, this is what's coming next, I then have that, right, I've got to deliver on my promise to my audience. But this next one, I think episode 11 will not be coming for quite some time. So I just did episode, I did it a while ago now, but episode 10 was on the Gabriel Lone Ranger toy line from the 70s.
Nice.
And at the end of that, I said, right, the next one I'm going to do is Evel Knievel, King of the Stunt Toys, is the title.
So good. Oh my goodness. And don't tell me you haven't got an Evel Knievel to use, therefore you're going to have to hunt it out first.
I have a couple, but the thing with my Toy Histories episodes, they're very, very in-depth.
Yeah.
I don't have to have the entire line, but I have to have a decent chunk of the line. And I've only got like 3 of the toys at the moment. I need a lot more. So that has sort of prompted. But I've already done that with a number of, like when I announced that I was going to do the Gabriel Lone Ranger, I had a Lone Ranger figure that was incomplete, and I had a complete Tonto. That was it.
Yeah.
And then over the next 6 months, I acquired 80% of the toy line.
Nice.
And it was a toy line I really wanted to collect. And I've had a lot of requests for the Evel Knievel line. So those people who watch my $6 Million Man videos, my Mego videos, those 70s ones, that's the one other toy they really asked for. And I had Evel Knievel toys as a kid as well. And there's some toys there that I would like to reacquire. But other big projects I was watching Bob Breakins, he did a presentation on Palatoy at Echo Live, and it was up I watched a couple of weeks ago, and I just had this brainwave, and I emailed Bob straight away, and I was like, Bob, it's the 100-year anniversary of Palatoy. Why am I not doing an epic video on the history of Palatoy?
Good point.
It's probably, I'm already looking at kind of a two-parter.
Yeah.
I think because the property, I don't think I can do the idea justice in a 15-20 minute video. I think it's going to be sort of 2 20-minute parts. I think maybe I'll talk about, the early days of Castleloyd, how it became Palatoy, Action Man up to, say, the mid-70s.
Yeah.
And then split the second half. I will obviously again draw on Bob as a resource, but I got so much original photography and stuff that I acquired from, not just from Bob, Brian Turner, one of Palatoy's, originally a display manager, then came on to designing toys. When I was filming the Action Man documentary, I rented a function room at a small hotel in Leicester. I rented it over a 4 or 5 day period. That's where I filmed all the interviews. But the first couple of days, it was just me, Bob, and Brian sat in this room going through my script, making sure all the facts were correct. And Bob brought in two big boxes of slides. And the old slide projector where you have the cartridge?
Yeah.
We were putting these in, putting the slides up on a big screen, and I was just photographing them straight off the screen, and the image quality was fantastic.
Amazing. And
that's where I got. So I've in my Action Man documentary, you see all the stills of the unreleased 1984 Toy Fair photos. That all came from Brian Turner.
Why didn't I think of that when I was doing Bob's interview? Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So I started going back through all my digital files the other day, and there was probably a lot more stuff they had at the time that I didn't photograph from other toy lines because I was there for Action Man.
Yeah.
But there was. I wish I had a lot more, but I've got a lot of really, really cool Toy Fair photos that are non-Action Man related. And I sent a few of them through to Bob, and this was only in the last couple of weeks. And Bob actually got really excited. I sent him a photograph of him with the striker football game.
Nice.
There's a photo of Bob sitting down at a Toy Fair, actually playing the game. Like his face, he's not looking at the camera. His face is
concentrating.
Looking at his game.
Amazing.
I sent this through to Bob, and he was like, where the hell did you get this photograph?
Yeah.
I said, that came from Brian's slides back then. And because I don't think they've got digital copies of all those slides.
They never get shared. It's not like they hang out with each other and get the slide machine out, is it?
No, I don't think the slide projector comes out that often, no. So I was going through this and I'm thinking, I've got a lot of images that people haven't seen, all Palatoy related, a lot of Toy Fair stuff. I already have an extensive knowledge of the history of Palatoy through doing the Action Man documentary, but then, Bob will correct any mistakes in any of my facts, and I think this video is going to take a while. I'm going to bounce the script and the research back and forth with him a number of times until he's happy with it as well. I don't want to get anything wrong and make a mistake there. But I really think, if Palatoy was still around, they would be celebrating their 100-year anniversary, or the centenary.
Crazy.
I think it's Analog Toys' duty to put our best effort into an epic video for them.
Mate, that is incredible. And I think you should get on this. Drop everything you're doing at the moment and just focus on that. I
kind of am. I got the idea 2 weeks ago. That's what I'm doing now.
That's brilliant. That is so cool. And I had no idea that was the case. So that was perfect for that question. Thank you very much.
It will also give me another opportunity to put the Robo Skull on film again, being one of Palatoy's greatest Action Force toys. And
the Robo Skull video can just go into that video inside it to make a super video.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tony, that brings us to the end of the interview. Thank you so much, mate, for coming on. I've really appreciated you jumping on. It's been so much fun chatting with you. Before you go, tell everyone where they can find you. And obviously, I doubt the people listening and watching this won't already know that. Obviously, they'll already know who you are and who Analog Toys are. But for those that may not know who you are, where can they find you?
So on YouTube at Analog Toys. We're on Facebook as Analog Toys. I have a Twitter account, but I've got to admit, I don't think I've sent a tweet in about a year. So don't bother looking me up on Twitter. I'm not big on Twitter. And obviously, and the other place you can find us is Patreon, where you can get There's some unreleased videos that are on there, and some sort of lost analog toys videos, and I do I give my Patreons some exclusive sort of behind the scenes info, so some behind the scenes photographs and a few short videos that are just for the patrons. So
that's awesome. Awesome, great. Well, dude, thank you so much for jumping on. I've really loved chatting with you. It's been great.
No, I've really enjoyed it myself. Thanks for having me on.
I paid him to say that. Thank you, Tony. That's it for this instalment of the Full Force Newsbird. Thank you to my awesome guest, Tony Roberts. See you next time, and as always, analog toys. I mean, full force.
Full force.
Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.